After weeks of debates, rallies, and campaign stops, after days of watching results roll in, after waiting for all of the votes to be counted, we finally have a winner.
That's right, Taylor. States have been flipped on the coveted road to 670 electoral college votes, some playing a key role in how this race is played out, including some battlegrounds and some that were expected to be locked.
Today, we'll be telling you how the winner got to those 270 votes and how he was able to rally the votes necessary to take the position of Commander-in-Chief.
This is Watch History Happen, Election Day 2020, the results.
Live from the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh, this is Watch History Happen 2020 with Taylor Spirito and Marley Pinshaw.
Welcome everyone to Watch History Happen Election Day 2020, the results. I'm Taylor Spirito.
And I'm Colin the Bias. We've been watching the polls for the last 4 days, focusing on the flips and seeing leads from both sides diminish as time goes on. Some states have less than 1% difference between the two candidates, including some with a 0.1% margin.
But we want to tell you that former Vice President Joe Biden has been declared the projected winner of the 2020 presidential election. Let's break down some of those numbers now. So, Colton, he's sitting at a solid 279 electoral college votes. Earlier today, he was sitting at that 253, which is where he's been for the past few days after flipping Wisconsin and Michigan from Donald Trump's victories there in 2016. And the main factor to him declaring victory today, not even that Arizona was projected to be in his favor on election night, not even that Nevada was called. It was our very own home of Pennsylvania, those 20 electoral college votes, one of the most coveted states to get in the presidential election, has been flipped and now sits as a blue striped state, blue striped outline on New York Times, on CNN, ABC, and NBC.
And also, Taylor, you also have like a CNN, Fox News, and also pretty much all of the networks have called it for the former vice president. Now, we knew going in to this election that the state of Pennsylvania was going to play a pivotal part in who would decide the next president, and it did just that, as Pennsylvania was the state that was able to get Vice President Biden over the hump. Now, I think it is important to know, as we were discussing this, you know, that the president is not going to go quietly, and he is most likely going to demand recounts in all of these states, and he actually will get some recounts as it is required by law.
Absolutely. In Pennsylvania, it's required by law to have a recount if the percentage of difference between the two candidates is less than 1%. He's also going to do the same thing in Wisconsin, where former Vice President Joe Biden sits with a 0.6% lead over the former incumbent Donald Trump. Now, the main key to Biden's victory, as we've seen, has been that these flip states that have gone in his favor, not even the ones that have been officially declared. You know, we see Wisconsin, Michigan, PA officially declared as a flip state, but then you look at how the track in Arizona and how Georgia is going. Now, Georgia is still sitting at 98%, a little bit greater than 98% votes called, and Joe Biden has a 0.1 lead there, with about 6,000 votes in between. And then Arizona, again, with Joe Biden at 0.6 ahead of President Donald Trump. Now, those two states were also going to be flips. They have not been called, of course, but very, very quickly, I want to touch about the importance, I should say, of Pennsylvania. We kind of discounted Pennsylvania as the race went on when Fox and the Associated Press called Arizona, and Joe Biden was sitting at 264 by their counts. All he needed was Nevada's 6 electoral college votes, and it seemed very likely that he was going to get it. It was just a waiting game to see when Nevada would release their results, and then Pennsylvania beat them to the punch.
Yeah, that's right, Taylor. As we were pretty much in here for the past 2 days just waiting and waiting, as we were pretty much in a holding pattern with the results, as we just didn't know who won until probably about an hour ago. So as of now, we know now, but we know that the president is not going to go down without a fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll break down the campaign promise that was made by President-elect Joe Biden and what it means for the next 4 years.
Go.
Go to our new website, uvu.pointpark.edu.
Go, 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 go.
Join UView and find your herd.
Be like,
Join EOP.
and 3, 2.
Join EOP. Join on point with politics.
3, 2, 1.
Join Pioneer Sideline.
Loneliest number that you'll ever do.
Welcome back. We've been following some key Senate races around the country as the results start to pour in. Let's take a look at those now.
So the main thing is going to be the race in Georgia, correct, Colton?
Yeah, that's right, Taylor, because the Senate is still up for grabs for majority control because of the 2 Senate races in Georgia that are going to go into a runoff in January.
Yeah, that was announced officially last night. I believe it was, what's the incumbent's name? I'm blanking.
It's David Perdue and John Ossoff.
Perdue said that he was excited to go into overtime, as a quote. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, especially with Georgia presumably flipping into the Democratic state with electing former Vice President Joe Biden as the projected presidential candidate, or president-elect, excuse me. A predominantly red-driven state, especially as we've seen in history, with the South states normally going that direction. And now not only are they going that way in the presidential election, but they're also going that way in the Senate. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah, that's right, Taylor. And who would have ever thought that Georgia, a state that has not voted blue since, I believe, President Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush back in 1992, who would have ever expected that Georgia was going to be a pivotal state in this election for Democrats to gain back the presidency and also gain control in the Senate?
Now, we've also been following the race for Pennsylvania's 17th district between Democratic incumbent Conor Lamb and his Republican challenger Sean Parnell. We have the updates on that race for you now, and actually, it's been made official that Conor Lamb has reclaimed his spot in Congress by defeating his challenger Sean Parnell. Parnell was up by pretty much most of this race until sometime yesterday, but right now, with a total reported of 95%, Conor Lamb has 51.1% of the votes with 216,094, whereas Sean Parnell sits at 48.9% with 207,103 votes. Now, Lamb declared victory before this race was even done, and it was still a very close race when he declared victory, I should say. Has Sean Parnell conceded yet?
Well, I'm not sure, Taylor. I guess we might have to take a look at Twitter. I'm going to do that right now to see if there is any update on that. But we knew, Taylor, that this race was going to be tight from the start. I mean, Parnell ran a great campaign, and so did Conor Lamb here. And, knowing that, it's the areas of, Cranberry, it's, around the Pittsburgh suburbs. So, when we get into the city, the majority votes blue, but this congressional district went right into the suburbs. So we knew that it was going to be a fight, and Conor Lamb, I guess, came out on top. And I thought he maybe jumped the gun a little bit about declaring victory a few nights ago, but after all, I guess it wasn't a bad thing.
Absolutely. We'll just have to see what happens with Sean Parnell, if he has conceded or not. We'll give you updates on that as well. But over the past year or so, we've been hearing from both presidential candidates about the promises they plan to act on if they were elected. Both incumbent President Donald Trump and former Vice President Biden have views on either side of the spectrum. With Biden becoming the president-elect, we want to take a look back at his campaign promises and what they could mean for you. Now, both candidates had very differing views when it came to pretty much everything. You watched the debates, I'm presuming?
Oh, yes, Taylor, I watched all two. I did watch both of them. And the vice presidential debate between Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and Vice President Pence.
Which we should mention, the first woman to hold an office in the presidential office, president or vice president, and the first woman of color to become vice president. So, of course, congratulations to her on that precedent that she is setting. Very, very nice. So the big thing that Biden said that he wants to do is he wants to defeat COVID. That is something that he said he wants to enact a stronger, I don't want to say lockdown, but like a strategy to further beat COVID-19 and make it so that the numbers that we have now, especially in the spike that we're having right now, the largest one-day totals in the United States during this entire pandemic, he wants to see those diminished. And he is going to, in I believe it was the first 100 days, have something to do about that. We're on his campaign website right now. It says he wants to reopen schools and businesses safely. I know he also is talking about getting another stimulus check passed. Of course, the first one passed back at the beginning of the pandemic, $1,200. And that includes, with the COVID bounce back, he wants to have an economic recovery plan for working families in this difficult time for most working families. And he wants to build back the economy better than he was left with. And to no fault of President Donald Trump, of course. You don't plan for a pandemic, and you don't really, you can't really deal with it accordingly as soon as it springs up on you like that.
Yeah, that's right, Taylor. And it is interesting to see about the coronavirus. Joe Biden has said that if he is elected president, one of the first people that he was going to call is Dr. Fauci. It makes me wonder if he has made that phone call yet.
Very, very interesting. Let's see what else is on here.
And he also does want to expand the Affordable Care Act, because this has been something that has been up for debate with the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. As knowing Republicans have a 6-3 majority, there were a lot of fears that the Affordable Care Act was going to be abolished by the Supreme Court. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is going to play out in the next couple of months. And we should point out that Donald Trump is still going to be the president until January. But as we talked about, we know he is not going to go quietly, and we'll see where these recounts are going to play out.
Another thing that Vice President Biden is very adamant about, I should say, is that he wants to help the minorities in America, I should say. Anything from building up African American neighborhoods to making them more livable and making it so that they're not as oppressed, or like voter oppression you see with polling places and how they're not accessible. He wants to further give access to people who are minorities throughout the country. And then furthermore, with the LGBT community, he wants to give them the access to everything that they need in order to feel equal in this country. And you can see with President Donald Trump's presidency, the step backs that he made in regards to the LGBT community. I don't want to say beginning with, but definitely including the trans ban for the military. That was later recalled, but still was a prevalent thing going on.
Yeah, that's right, Taylor.
Let's see what else is on here that we could talk about. He has one thing that he did say in the final presidential debate was that he wants to move away from the oil industry. Now, that didn't sit right with many Americans, and especially in Pennsylvania, you see a lot of people talking about fracking and the fracking industry here in PA, especially where we are in kind of southwestern Pennsylvania, big industry here, and in West Virginia. Former Vice President Biden has said that he wants to start moving away from fracking and how he wants to start moving away from the oil industry. And again, that's something that did not sit right with a lot of Trump supporters and a lot of people who are in this community. And you see the Trump campaign really use that to their advantage going forward, talking about fracking all the time and talking about how they were going to protect fracking, talking about how they were going to protect the oil industry. But former Vice President Biden's main thing with that was that he was talking about moving more toward renewable energy. And although it didn't come across that way, and it, again, didn't settle right, he is very passionate about the climate change and protecting the environment. Not as much as some socialist candidates that we've seen, like Bernie Sanders or AOC, but he is still about moving away from what we know and going into the new. Something that might backfire at the end, but we don't know. It is literally day one of him being projected as the presidential winner.
And if you folks at home have owned a television in these past couple of months, I am sure that you have seen some advertisements of people who do work in the fracking industry with saying things like, if fracking's banned, 600,000 jobs are going to be lost right here in Pennsylvania. Now, Joe Biden has reassured those people that he is not going to take fracking away, but as you said, Taylor, he is going to try to move towards that renewable energy. And also something that caught my eye with what the Biden campaign wants to do is he wants to bring like a second railroad revolution back to the United States. Now, Amtrak, the federal passenger rail service here in the United States, has suffered due to the coronavirus, as a lot of jobs have been furloughed within the company. Now, I'm curious to see how President-elect Biden is going to handle it because I'm pretty sure he wants to bring something like high-speed rail back to the United States, something that we have seen in Europe and Asia. And because, as we mentioned with the climate change conversation, Taylor, it helps with climate change because it gets more cars off the road. So we'll see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, and again, it is day one of him being the president-elect. So we'll have to see what happens after his inauguration. Like you said, President Donald Trump is still going to be the president for approximately 2 more months. So we'll see what happens there. But thank you all so much for joining us throughout this entire process. This has been a wild ride, to say the least. And we thank you so much for joining us at home, watching outside of the TVs, outside of the Center for Media Innovation, and just following us along the way as your trusted news source. So this has been Watch History Happen. Watch History Happen, Election Day 2020, the results. I'm Taylor Spirito.
And I'm Colin the Bias, and we thank you for joining us.